class is staying on track, simple routines for better blood sugar management. Today, we'll take approximately 20 to 25 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I know it's been popular in the past for people to type out their question in the chat box. If you had wanted to do that, by all means, I'll keep a watchful eye on that. Okay? So, first things first, my name's Kevin Thomas. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian working for GemCare Wellness. I've been there now about 8 years, though I've been a dietitian going on 18, having worked in diabetes centers, long-term care, a dialysis center, even worked for 5 years in a surgical and non-surgical weight loss center. So I'm pretty well versed when it comes to helping members improve their health. But let's go ahead and get started with the first slide here. A quick overview of what we will be discussing. Firstly, looking at when it comes to diabetes, why routines are very important and how consistency can certainly affect one's body and obviously one's blood sugars. Also exploring what are some simple daily routines for meal, movement monitoring, and medications. Routines are very important, and we will certainly talk quite a bit about that. Also exploring how to handle days that are just overwhelming, right? So very busy days, looking at what disruptions and even maybe some setbacks that can happen while managing diabetes, and learning to look at it in a very positive way, is such as a simple learning experience and looking at those experiences without guilt. And lastly, the key mindset shift for long-term success, which is progress over perfection. So perfect is a killer of good. And if we can get focused on just a couple small routines, some work much better than others. And by all means, we're going to explore that. All right. And as it says on the bottom there, please be advised that this webinar is being recorded for future reference and educational purposes. By continuing to participate, you consent to the recordings of your image, voice, and/or any contributions you make during this session. The recorded content may be used for internal training, distribution to other participants, or for future webinars. All right. So first things first. When it comes to diabetes, why are routines so important? Well, simply put, our blood sugar responds to patterns. So if there's consistent meals, consistent activity or exercise, and if one consistently takes medications, they help to reduce those sharp highs and sharp lows, similar to a mountain. All right, if I could use the analogy here with my hands, blood sugar skyrockets and comes back down. That has a tendency to happen more so with people that don't stick to usual patterns, a usual routine. If one is skipping meals, inevitably what happens is they enter the following meal, however later that is, with a lower than normal blood sugar. And because they're quite hungry, what has a tendency to happen for some people is they overeat. Well, what's going to happen? We're going to see a blood sugar low and then a big blood sugar spike, which often is followed by a big blood sugar dip a couple hours later. Also, predictability helps your body know what to expect. For those people that stick, even if we just look at a consistent meal plan of having breakfast, lunch, and dinner at usual times, give or take about an hour, okay? You will know with clarity, with a lot of accuracy, where your blood sugars ought to be going into that meal and where they should be following that meal. Also, routines help the mental load by creating a default plan. So if we're looking at a routine from an outside perspective, so if one doesn't eat 3 meals a day, or maybe one day they have 1 meal, the following day they have 3 with a couple of snacks, or that person might exercise 3 or 4 days a week, then might go several days without exercising. So their activity isn't very consistent, their meal pattern isn't very consistent, and that's hard to get restarted with these healthy lifestyle changes. But if one has a regular schedule, 3 meals a day, maybe snack or 2, and let's take a look at exercise. Let's say they're exercising Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. we'll have a much better idea of how our body responds with those usual routines. And it only takes a little while to notice the impact of a pretty good setup routine and schedule. If someone plans their meals, plans their week out ahead of time, there's really less daily decision making, which does take off a lot of stress for people. Okay. That decision fatigue that is very real for a lot of people, it comes into play more so with those people that don't plan very often, I found. And lastly, routines do not need to be perfect. It's important that we try to be flexible with our patterns because it does add up over time. Okay, so again, not saying we have to eat exactly at the same time or need to be exercising every single day, but it's important to have a routine that works for you. And lastly, one thing we haven't touched on yet is sleep patterns. If one stays up till 3 in the morning and gets a poor night's sleep, that can affect one's insulin levels and also one's blood sugar levels. In addition to that, if they're getting up at, let's say, 7 in the morning one morning, but then sleeping until noon the next, one might miss meals. Conversely, one might be skipping medications simply because they forgot. So yes, a consistent meal pattern also really does help control blood sugars or provides an additional step that certainly helps to control blood sugars. All right, so what does a supportive morning routine look like? It says here, bullet point number 1, your morning sets the tone for the day. It absolutely does. There's a big difference between having a fasting or before breakfast blood sugar of, let's say, 110 compared to somebody that might have a fasting blood sugar of 190. Both those are unique situations which should influence what food choices you choose for breakfast if one decides to have breakfast. It's often recommended to be checking our blood sugars before breakfast. Okay? And this would be something you would discuss with your doctor or with your dietitian. And looking at that morning blood sugar number as just information, not judgment for what may have happened the night before. It's important to be taking medications on a consistent time for best effectiveness. For example, if one takes their morning medication at, let's say, 7 o'clock on Monday morning, but then they wait until noon the next day, many medications typically stay in our system for a while, but normally about 24 hours. So if we're going over that 24 hours, there's simply going to be less coverage, so to speak, of that medication to be actually working on that second day. It's also important to pair meds with an existing or medications with an existing habit, whether or not that habit might be, for example, drinking coffee or brushing one's teeth. If we pair two habits together, the likelihood of us sticking with a new healthy habit dramatically goes up. For instance, if we're putting our morning medications right next to our toothbrush, when we brush our teeth every morning, we're going to be prompted when we see the medication or the bottle of medication to be taking it right before we brush our teeth or just after. Same idea with coffee. If you have, let's say, your medicine cabinet or maybe some of the medications left out next to your morning cup of coffee, you're going to be prompted for it to be taking those medications, and you won't have to remember to be doing it. You'll see it, and it's obvious. It's important to choose a balanced breakfast with protein and fiber to prevent spikes or crashes. So protein and fiber, also fat, helps to prevent a surge or a spike in blood sugars. So making sure we're having some protein, fiber, and fat at almost all meals is often recommended. And lastly, a quick mental check-in helps you plan meals and move it ahead of time. Okay, so it's important before we start a day to think to ourselves, all right, do we have anything on our life plate that might influence our health today? It could be, well, if we're traveling across the country, making sure we have our medications. Making sure, in this case, if one's wearing a continuous glucose monitor, well, when's that time on that monitor run up? Or that sensor, when's it run up? Just having the foresight to think to ourselves, do we need to pack extra? Do we need to take anything extra with us? It is quite important for most people. All right. So exploring for a moment, mealtime routines that support stability. This is very important. Number one says mealtime routines are an important tool for blood sugar stability. Okay. Key word being routines. So it's important to eat at roughly consistent times to avoid large swings in blood sugars. Exploring what are the macronutrients. We have carbohydrates, we have protein, and fats. We need these at each and every meal. When it comes to diabetes, well, when it comes to what we consider a diabetes diet, if we can go there, okay, what it would be for most people is to try to have a consistent amount of carbohydrates for breakfast, a consistent amount for lunch, and a consistent amount for dinner. Unfortunately, what a lot of people do, they may have, and I'll make up an example which is very popular, is very common, I should say, where somebody might skip breakfast or have a small amount of carbohydrates with their breakfast. Then lunch is going to be bigger than breakfast because they largely skip breakfast. But then dinner is a quite larger meal as compared to lunch and breakfast. That often leads to big swings in blood sugars because in the evening, most people aren't very active. So if you're not active and you're also having the largest meal of the day during that time where you're not active, that often leads to big blood sugar spikes that can last for several hours into the evening and for many hours while the person's sleeping in some cases. So yes, portion control is very important, okay, to make sure that our meals are simply not large. And if there's one takeaway from this to simplify, well, what does it take from the nutrition end of things to really help our blood sugars? Avoid very large meals or avoid large meals or large amounts of carbohydrates at any one time. An example of this would be like pizza, right? So if we're having pizza, it's the dough itself that would be the carbohydrate component. But what do people often have with pizza? There was just a Super Bowl yesterday, so I think this is kind of I dare to say, a usual habit for a lot of people. They have pizza with breadsticks. Well, the breadsticks are another source of carbohydrates. So having pizza and breadsticks may spike blood sugars if we're having too many slices or too many pieces of breadsticks. For some people, that's often maybe one or two slices of pizza with one or two breadsticks, as opposed to 3 or 4 slices of pizza with 3 or 4 breadsticks, which is normally would be too much for almost anyone trying to control their blood sugars while living with diabetes. The second to last point says pair carbs or carbohydrates with protein or fiber to reduce blood sugar spikes. As I alluded to just a moment ago, trying to pair them with protein, fiber, and a little bit of fat. Most foods that are protein rich, which are often animal based, almost always have some fat with the protein. Whether it's ground beef, whether it's pork chops, whether it's steak, whether it's poultry, you're always going to have some fat there. Some more than others, but there's always going to be some fat. And lastly, it's important to slow down while eating to notice fullness and prevent overeating. That's often really the term that this describes would be intuitive eating. It's hard to really sense our fullness if we're eating fast. It's important to enjoy the meal. Take our time. Maybe put the fork or spoon down in between bites. A lot of people realize if they slow down their eating, they simply eat less food because they don't go through it too quick. And they sense that fullness coming on as opposed to a couple minutes after the fast meal was finished. So exploring the importance of movement. So movement of any kind, all right, helps the body use insulin more effectively. Insulin is a hormone that our body naturally produces for most people. Okay. The only example would be those living with type 1 diabetes, their body doesn't produce insulin. Okay. But for anybody else, which in this case would be, for everybody with diabetes, for every 20 people with diabetes, one person would be living with type 1 diabetes, whereas those remaining 19 would be living with type 2. So yes, movement really does matter. Similar to a vehicle going down the road. A vehicle going down the road simply goes through more gas than if it was shut off or if it was just idling. In the type of exercise and movement, it doesn't always have to be intense. Okay, so for example, one might be able to walk for 10 minutes and it fits their morning routine or after work or midday routine just fine. And it's something they might be able to do on repeated days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, take a day off. Thursday, continue, into the weekend. Okay. It could be just 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, sustained activity. Or it could be lifting weights or using resistance bands. But it all does help. There's no ideal type of exercise when it comes to diabetes, but as a general rule of thumb, I encourage you to find something or some type of routine when it comes to exercise that you enjoy. It could be going to the gym and sweating on a treadmill. It could be outside, taking the dogs for a real long walk. A member I worked with not that long ago, her and her husband signed up to do ballroom dancing classes, which I thought was awesome because they both like music and they wanted kind of a cool date night once a week of something for them to do that's different. So again, it doesn't really matter what type of exercise it is, as long as it's something that gets you out there and gets you active. And second to last bulletin point there, it says light movement after meals helps reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes. So what the studies show is even as little as a 10-minute walk after dinner, which is often the largest meal of the day, can really prove positive or really prove helpful to keep one's blood sugars from spiking. If you haven't tried that yet, I'd recommend looking at your blood sugars before and after a walk, after a meal, in this case, dinner. All right, so it's important that we monitor without burnout, okay? Meaning it's often important to be looking at our blood sugars, okay? Look at it from a very critical perspective, trying not to be too judgmental on ourselves. If we notice that last night we had a big blood sugar spike for dinner, think to ourselves, why did it lead to a blood sugar spike? Was it because going into that meal, my blood sugars weren't down to the healthy range just yet? Was it too much snacking? What are some factors? Was I not active yesterday? Looking at it, very critical, is important. And it's very important to be looking at patterns. As a dietitian, that's often what we explore. Many times when we look at one's blood sugar data, depending on one's continuous glucose monitor that they have, I often look at printouts. In this case, it'd be a spreadsheet of 2 weeks worth of data that with certain CGMs, they have applications and sites one can sign up to have a dietitian take a look at. I look for patterns. With some people, I've noticed a sharp spike in blood sugars Friday night and Saturday night. Well, why is that? For some people, they're not as active physically. They might not be working. Their schedule when it comes to eating might not be as routine or usual as Monday through Friday. Okay? And they're relaxing a little bit. Now, is that an area of complaint or anything like that? No, but it's often an area that with one or two little tweaks, one could have considerably better blood sugar control of the weekend. Also looking at our routine. What if we notice midweek around Wednesday, around lunch, we always have a blood sugar spike? Well, why is that? Are we eating out midday? Because, hump day's there and we're over that first part of the week? Or is there something else going on? Is there long meetings that leads us not being able to get up and move around quite a bit? Well, that can all influence our blood sugar numbers for sure. So yes, tools like continuous glucose monitors or CGMs, and tracking applications, they certainly help to visualize trends. They also give you, with CGMs, an idea of where your blood sugar is at all throughout the day, which cannot be done with a glucometer, which is a finger stick. Put a little drop of blood on the test strip. That's completely different. Gives some information, but not nearly as much as CGMs. And lastly, it's important to use the data to guide conversations with your healthcare team. When it comes to routine labs for blood sugars, it's usually an A1C, a hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month blood sugar average number. That doesn't tell the full story. That just says where your average is. So if somebody has a lot of low blood sugars and a lot of high blood sugars, what's the average? The average could be quite good, but there's a lot of those spikes, a lot of those dips. With CGMs, or continuous glucose monitors, it says how often your blood sugars are in the healthy range and also gives you an average blood sugar throughout the week or even throughout the day. So yes, what gets measured gets managed. Okay, cannot speak enough to that, but it's very important. Now, when it comes to medication and supply routines, it's it's key for most people. I've been doing this 18 years. I've yet to work with somebody managing diabetes long term that doesn't use medications as but one piece within their a toolbox, so to speak, to control their blood sugars. So it's very important that medication adherence is consistent. Okay. And when it's consistent, it works much better. For us to get to the point where we're consistent with the medication, some people need to have alarms set up on their phone, maybe even have pill organizers out. Visual cues, as I stated earlier, setting medications out, making it easy so we don't forget is very important. What's also key is to plan refills ahead of time to reduce stress and missed doses. If we're waiting until we have one pill left to call that medication in to get delivered, picked up at the pharmacy, what if they're out at our local pharmacy? Or what if you're getting it through mail order and it might take 4 days to get there? If we're proactive, it almost always helps in our case. And lastly, says routine should make diabetes management fit smoothly into one's daily life. We also need to acknowledge if we haven't been living with diabetes very long, or if we're now taking more medication than we have in the past, it might take a little while for those routines to feel comfortable. Okay. And the whole idea is how can we make it comfortable so we're not having to rely on our memory? If it's out, we see it, there's prompts, we're going to be way more consistent. Everyone should expect and anticipate that some days when it comes to diabetes are going to be much better than others. Things happen, okay? Whether it's travel, stress, illness, busy schedules, there's a lot that can be put on our life plate that we didn't really see coming. It could hit us from left field, right? Well, that being the case, it's often recommended to have simple backup options for meals and movement. I'll give an example of what I mean by that. Some people, their simple option for when life gets busy is to have groceries delivered to their home. That isn't a bad option. Might save time, right? In addition to that, some people, when it comes to their backup options for meals, they're TV dinners or canned soups or canned tuna. Something quick, something easy, could be a meal replacement bar or a protein drink. It doesn't have to be food that's made from scratch. And also our movement. If our routine under best case scenario allows us to work out several days a week for 30, 45 minutes, or even an hour, great, good for you. But if you're stressed and your time is limited, maybe that needs to be a very short 5-minute walk. And that's the only time that you have. Acknowledging, hey, I did the best I could. Is it ideal of what I normally do? Maybe not, but it's something. When it comes to strength training, I tell everybody, if you're busy and you travel a lot and you don't have time to work out, bring some resistance bands with you. They take up very little space and you can get one heck of a workout in as little as 10 minutes. So that might be a way to which you can kind of hack the exercise piece for a short period of time. The second to last bulletin point there says, one day off doesn't erase progress. I'd say that's a problem for a lot of people is they expect perfection. And my goal for, not my goal, but some people, their goal is to work out every day. Well, that's not going to work for most people because they get burnt out, right? So occasionally a day or two might need to be taken off. Same with nutrition. If one is stressed about all the nutrition changes, is having a hard time fitting in 3 meals a day, maybe every so often take a day off from worrying about it. Maybe have 1 or 2 meals if you're accustomed to having 3 recently, right? Maybe eat that piece of cake that you've been wanting to have that you simply haven't had because your blood sugar numbers were looking good. Maybe, just maybe, you need to take a break for a short period of time. And that's okay. So lastly, the key skill set is to basically have the motto, you know, restart without guilt. If we didn't do great today, try to do better the next day. It's not about perfection. It isn't. All right. So, like I stated earlier, I'm a dietitian, and there's a few of us on the team, the Core Advantage team. So what this is, this program will be through Edwards Healthcare Services. This is a free nutrition consultation program over the phone. And what the Core Advantage does, it goes beyond nutrition coaching and diabetes supplies. It offers a well-rounded program designed to support lifestyle, mindset, and overall well-being. We try to personalize our calls to what the member wants to work on, what the member deems important. For some people, the Core Advantage program is a quarterly call, so once every 3 months for 30 minutes. We might talk about nutrition, or maybe we might not talk about nutrition at all. Maybe we'll talk about exercise, or stress management, or sleep improvement, or really just answer any general questions they might have about health and wellness. We see where the conversations take us. Some people want to get into the specifics. They might want to have me look up their blood sugar data. That's fine. Okay, there's a lot of different routes or scenarios we can go through during these calls. Okay, but we try to tailor it to that person's life, right? Try to see what they want to focus on as opposed to what I think that they need. Now, part of the Core Advantage program is the staff at Edwards Healthcare Services. They try to provide refill reminders and try to coordinate care. So there's one less thing that you would have to worry about. And again, the Core Advantage program is a free program. It's an opt-out anytime program. And it's just something to set ourselves apart a little bit to best help our members. And again, it's not about being perfect. It's about feeling empowered to take care of yourself simply one day and one meal at a time. A few key takeaways from today's class. Number one, long-term success comes from progress, not perfection. Even an A1C of 7, which is often recommended as the goal for blood sugar control, what that means is one's blood sugar is in the healthiest range approximately 70% of the time, meaning there's usually room for improvement for most people. And that improvement might be 1 or 2% better the next A1C, right? Or small steps of progress. So consistent habits matter more than extreme changes. I'd say it's intuitive for a lot of people that have fallen off track, so to speak. For them to get back on track, they have to exercise almost every day, and all their meals need to be planned. And they're trying, making sure they don't eat carbohydrates in isolation, trying to make sure that they're taking medications on time. This might be too much change. And for a lot of people, it is. Maybe starting with, my first step this week, I'm taking all my medications on time. Once I have it down pat, I'm going to work towards something else next week. Routines create stability. And that's a very good thing. And flexibility helps to maintain them. So we have to acknowledge there's certain routines that we need set up. They might be very difficult to follow at first. Trying to be flexible with some factors that are largely out of our influence. Okay, and all of us have some factors that are largely out of our control. And our routine should support your life. It shouldn't add pressure. Like I stated earlier, if we're trying to establish a new habit, if we can pair it with another habit that we already have in place, it's a lot easier. For example, exercise. If one likes to watch TV or watch YouTube, how about we exercise with a tablet or our phone in front of us on elliptical or treadmill? Or how about we listen to something on our headphones while we're walking, right? Well, if we like to listen to, let's say, to a podcast or a book on MP3, it encourages us to get out there and get moving. You pair one with the other, and it works great. All right, so at the end of the day, it isn't about perfect numbers. It certainly isn't. It's about building skills and confidence. When it comes to diabetes is very unique in the fact that with some people, it doesn't take long and they might develop complications. Conversely, I've worked with people that have had diabetes almost 60 years and are still doing good. No heart issues, no vision issues, no kidney issues, no neuropathy or nerve-related issues. So diabetes is something, if it's well managed, we can live with for decades upon decades upon decades. All right. So, was there any questions now that we are near the end that anybody in the audience wanted to ask? I'll give everybody a minute here. Let me look at the chat. All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, whether it is through the My EHCS web address here or even the 1-800 number. Thank you very much for your time and have a good week. All the best.